Hi, welcome to the Initiative for Faith and Family. This is part 2 of a 3-part series on our critical conversation about disabilities and specialized needs. And we are back here again with our guest, Jared Leach, who really in our first session just helped us understand the heart of God and this biblical understanding of people who've been entrusted to us in our homes, in our churches, and also just why we maybe fall short of that in the church, maybe just from our own ignorance or our lack of understanding about something, or even our experience of being around people who have disabilities. And so we're going to continue this conversation today and dig a little deeper into what does it mean to help these families and these individuals really feel belonging and inclusion in the church. And then what does it look like to have faith development alongside of that? And how do we support families and parents? So thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have the second part of our conversation.
Me as well.
It was just really, I feel like there was such a beautiful foundation laid in our first session. And now we're going to kind of dig a little deeper. And then even in our third session, get real practical.
Yeah.
So, but let's start. Let's start with this idea of belonging and inclusion. I know I've been at different churches where there are different understandings of what belonging means or inclusion means, or the philosophical discussion of whether they should be completely integrated into a program, if there should be a special separate program for them. And when there is a special separate program, is that mean inclusion? And just, I think we have misconceptions or we have misunderstandings about all of these terms and what's best for individuals. Will you help us navigate that?
Yeah, this is muddy waters, definitely.
Right, because there's not a one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really the key that I think clears up the muddy water. But there's things, educationally, there's federal law on inclusion, but there's also culturally, inclusion that word is getting very mixed in what it means. And I think it creates confusion, and every person has a different understanding of it. I think parents also have different desires and different goals for their children that inform a lot as well. But I love belonging, right? Because what does it mean to truly belong? Does it mean that, I'm just there in the midst of it? Not really. It means that I'm known. I have relationship with people. I'm able to make choices in where I'm at. I'm able to express my faith freely and openly. I'm heard, I'm seen, that I belong. And I think that paints a much richer, but practically speaking, I think the term inclusion still is meaningful in many ways. Inclusion means to be around others, you're included in the fun, you're included in the activities. And so there's a couple different ways of thinking about it. I think going back to our last, podcast, we talked about, closing that gap, looking at what's available to other people. And I love that place. I love starting there. And it's kind of a mental exercise I do when looking at anything, special education, special needs ministry related, what's available to other people, and then looking at the individual's needs, right? Because there's not a one size all fits, thing. It's difficult sometimes to decide and discern what's best. So 2 things. 1, rely on the Holy Spirit to guide you in what this individual needs, because there's things you can observe. There's things you can know from the family on what they need, but the Lord knows what they need most of all.
Yeah.
And so when you're taking that humble posture, you're relying on the Holy Spirit, things go really well. So you look at what the individual can do. Oftentimes, not what they can't do, but what they can do.
That's good. I like that.
Can they sit in a room of 20 individuals? Can they cope with class? If they can cope with class, let's try it. Let's get them someone to just be an extra set of hands and walk with them and develop relationship. And that's often what it looks like to go into the normal Sunday school classroom. If they can't cope with that, if it's too much sensory input, if the music's too loud or the lights are too bright, then let's look at a different space that's calming and regulating so that they're able to still be ministered to, still be discipled in that space, but do it in a way where they feel safe, because a lot of times the classroom for them won't feel safe, and we don't want to put anybody in that position.
That's right. Do you is this something you typically determine through trial and error, or is it like an intake you do with the families ahead of time, or a combination of both?
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. There's bits of trial and error sometimes. There's seasons that individuals go through where they need one or the other, and that takes some trial and error. But thankfully, parents kind of know. So I oftentimes will do an intake with our parents and ask them about things. How do they cope with people? What are some of their fears? What are some of their things that they're averse to? And that will inform a lot of our decision making. And a lot of these kids, they're going to class in school. That's 5 days a week around peers of the same age and same size. So usually if they're in school and they're going to class for half the day, then they can probably cope with
Mm,
Sunday school.
mm,
And there's a lot of um, research and science into what they can gain from being in that environment. But I've also seen it. I think a lot of us say, well, what can they really get out of being around their peers? Because a minimally verbal student isn't going to tell you what they've learned. They're not going to really show that they're learning anything. But the science and the research and what I've seen is they're actually little sponges, and they're absorbing so much. And
wow.
they're not only learning about the Bible and Christ and all these things, but they're feeling belonging. They're feeling a part of the group, and that's dignifying.
Yeah,
They're learning to be around other people, which is a huge life skill for them. So you're
right?
actually giving them the tools to, go around. And from the school side, when I was a teacher, we would always look at, like, is there a time that someone is, taking the child out into the community? And a lot of these families don't have an other opportunity other than school. So we're actually like a community support. We're giving them another opportunity to be around people. And research says that's a huge quality of life indicator.
For
And
sure.
so you're
Yeah,
doing not only faith discipleship, but you're improving lives and their livelihood from years to come. It's really powerful stuff when you
it
look at it,
is.
all the cards on the table.
It is, and I'm so glad you're bringing up all the different facets, because our our educational praxis has to change a little bit, because we've relied so much on if when we're teaching to know if we have been successful, do recitation or like feedback, like if
Hmm.
can you say the memory verse, can you tell us all, summarize the story, and like you're saying, maybe that isn't happening, but are there other ways that we can understand learning and faith development,
Hmm.
and I love what we're talking about with the belonging. So they have a place where they can belong even when they might be different, and that we're not asking them to change who they are to belong. This is part of it, right? This
Yeah.
is part of it. And it's for the good of the other kids, teens or adults that they're in there as well. Like we shared, it has an impact on us. Talk to us a little bit about a word we're hearing a lot, which is dysregulation or regulation, and what that means, and how do we help get from dysregulation to regulation, and how do we notice it, and what are some of those things that we
Yeah.
could be better
Yeah.
educated about?
And I love this because I get to talk about all people,
Yes.
all people. And, looking at things post COVID too, you have a lot of your general population also struggling and dysregulating. And so it's a unique opportunity too to see people as all people.
Humanity. Yeah.
How do I, recognize that, I'm about to dysregulate? I start to get really fidgety.
Mm,
And that's a common one. You start to fidget, you start to get anxious, you start to pull back from other people. Those are all things that all people do. And so when you have an individual with special needs and they're in the classroom and something is starting to to bother them, you'll see it. You'll see their face drop. They're not smiling anymore. They're pulling back or they're fidgeting.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, individuals who have autism will start to, stim. They'll start to flap. They'll start to do different things to cope with whatever they're going through.
And
And so,
stimming is a way that they are trying
yeah,
to regulate
yeah.
themselves. But oftentimes we tell them to stop.
Yeah. It looks like they're not paying attention. It looks like they're being loud sometimes, especially if it's a vocal stem. They're humming. It can be loud sometimes, and we say
Mm,
shh, shh, shh. That's actually how they're regulating themselves. And so when you actually tell them to be quiet and stop, that might trigger
mm,
a greater dysregulation
mm.
because, hey, that's how I'm trying to get through this.
Yeah.
And like most people, they're just trying to get through things. And
Yeah.
me too, some days,
Yeah.
if
Me
I didn't
too.
get enough sleep and
Yeah.
I'm trying to cope and, it's like someone taking away coffee in the morning. I'm going to dysregulate.
Oh, heavens, not the coffee.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Is
so,
eloping one of those? Is that a regulation?
right, yeah. I mean, have you
Because
ever
they're
been in a social situation and you just want to get out of there? I just want to escape the
my
situation
husband
that
is
I'm
great
in there.
at parties. He's an introvert. And now we're using the word. I'm like, are you eloping? Because he'll just like go in the other room. I'll walk in. He's watching news or he's down in his man cave fidgeting with something. But you're right. We all have. I know I have a friend who just will go to the restroom and kind of spend some quiet time in there, like at a big,
Uh-huh.
event or something. We all kind of do that. I think in ministry, the kids who like literally just take off running,
It's
that's one of our
shocking. It
biggest
gets
fear
our.
factors because it's like, what do I do like in
Mhm.
that moment?
Yeah. It can be so shocking, and our minds always go to the worst case, which is a good thing. We want to be prepared, right?
Sure.
We want to be ready because sometimes these situations do escalate to emergencies, and
Yeah.
it can be serious, but it's carrying both the practical safety scenario with also just this is a need. So if you think of it as we need to um solve this need and get them regulated, that's a helpful tool for you to use when you think about what to do and
Yeah.
not let's just keep them out of the road or, stop, stop, stop. That it just escalates the situation a little bit. So you want to keep your eyes on them at all times. You want to make sure that exits are covered, yes, but then start telling the individual what to do. Do you need to go to the sensory space? Let's go. Do you need to just sit down? Can we play right here in this corner, supervised, and then take a few deep breaths before we move on.
Mm.
But when we panic, they start to panic too.
Yeah.
And so that oftentimes is the thing that gets them going. Oftentimes I won't run as long as I have the individual in my eyesight. I'll play it cool. Even if internally I don't feel cool, I'll play it cool as long as I have my eyes on them. If I don't, then I,
Yeah.
escalate as well. But if
Yeah.
I have my eyes on them and they're not running towards an exit, let's talk about what you need and let's get you feeling right, so that we can re-enter the space because that's really what's going on. They need help. And oftentimes when we're in a panic, what do we need? We need a friend to come in there and be like, hey man, what's going on? How can I help you? You're safe, you're loved. Let me give you another chance,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to us, hurting our relationships, forgiveness. We talk about grace. We want to offer that same little olive branch. Let's try
Yeah.
again and do it again. And I think that oftentimes is not the reaction that they get. And so it causes a little bit of cognitive dissonance. They're like, well, this is different. And I, I feel safe.
Wow.
And that is how individuals feel safer in the room and stop doing that. And that will keep the behavior from happening.
There's a lot of dignity and grace in how you just said that. Do you know? Because I th- I believe that oftentimes this is dealt with completely like a behavioralistic thing. Like you ran out of the class, you're not allowed to run, or you're talking, you need to sit down. Like we're very
mhm.
structured. Um, and when we kind of approach it from a behavioralistic point of view or an academic point of view, I think we're missing the opportunity just to speak to them with dignity and not change our words or how I would respond to you. You know, we don't have to talk down. We don't have
Mhm.
to minimize what
Mm.
they're
Mhm.
and like how they're receiving. I think it's just that grace and dignity that I would want if I was losing my mind. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't want someone to discipline me. I want somebody to come alongside of me and meet me where I'm at. And that's what Christ does for us. He came and met us right exactly where we're at, you know, and I think this is such an opportunity for us to be flesh, you know,
Yeah.
the Christ with like flesh on in the midst of these situations.
Thank you for touching on that because I think so much of this just requires some humility, approaching people with
Mm,
humility, approaching them as people, as the image of God with that
yeah.
reverence. And I think that is really the key to welcoming families in, to inclusion, to belonging, is looking people as at people as the image of God, as people
Yeah.
who are dignified and humbling ourselves and saying, you're a person too.
Yeah. And not
Um,
always getting in trouble. You said that's sort of like cognitively that creates some dissonance because they're just used to maybe getting in trouble
Mhm.
or not meeting some standard.
Yeah, many times when they run to, some individuals, they're doing it because they want attention.
Oh.
They want you to chase them,
Ah.
depending on what it is. I've seen
Yeah.
that occur, and, that's something that they are used to people chasing, and so oftentimes, if you play it cool, you're not also giving them that, negative attention. You're saying, "Come on,
Yeah.
let's do this right,"
Yeah.
and it's just a beautiful picture of just walking alongside someone. And I think that oftentimes is all it takes is humbling ourselves, walking alongside them and reading them as just a person. There's definitely, like you said, trial and error though. Some things work, some things don't, but
Yeah.
give it some time. You'll figure it out and you'll be more comfortable. You'll see
Right.
your perspective change, but so will theirs. And it's
Yeah.
so rewarding when you
Well,
get time under your belt.
Well, we move from like this is a group to this is Sam, this is Lori, you know, this is Brandon. Like there are people that become individuals and then we get to know, oh, that works well. I mean, that's true for anybody, right?
Yeah.
And they respond well to this. So I think it's us learning, becoming students of the people that God has placed in front of us. I think one of the places where I need to constantly be a student, and maybe you can help all of us right now, is we talked about disabilities and specialized needs not being uh, a one size fits all, right?
Mhm.
But we tend to put them all in the same category. But will you educate us a little bit? There's physical disabilities, there's cognitive disabilities, there's maybe emotional disabilities because of trauma or whatever. Will you give us some buckets of understanding?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, uh-huh. I mean, when you get into physical disabilities, I think this is the one that's most common or, oftentimes I used to, I guess, teach elementary classes on, give them a little talk on special needs. And I like to start with wheelchairs, right? Because we can see it. Physical disabilities is just, it can be something you're born with, like you're born without, arms or legs, or you were born with cerebral palsy and different parts of your body is impacted. So you're using a wheelchair, you're using a walker, maybe you're using a prosthetic, arm. It's different things that could be completely unrelated from your mental capacities, or oftentimes you can have a physical disability and a cognitive impairment. And they are concurrent. They do present at the same time. And that is part of the fun is that a lot of these buckets are mixed. um,
Okay.
but that's kind of an overview of physical disabilities. And so it's trying to find different um, ways to get the wheelchair in, or accommodate in the classroom how to move a walker through the space.
Mhm.
Can they reach the same height as the other children? Do they need a different seat to help them? So, in the classroom, sometimes we would have depending on the age, if they're in, kindergarten level, the wheelchair's not going to fit at a kindergarten table. We got to get a bigger table in there so that the table fits and they can color alongside their peers. And
Oh.
It's just looking more at the physical space for physical disability, and
Sure.
you're seeing the need and you're meeting it. Cognitive disabilities are, harder to see. They're
Right.
harder to understand. They're not gonna always relate to things or know things the same way other children develop. Oftentimes, we'll give them like a mental age, which is good and it's bad, because some of them will have emotional age and mental age, and I think there's a lot of convolutedness to all of this is
Yeah.
but knowing what they understand comes with relationship again. And so what I'll do a lot is use visuals to teach and gestures to teach, which is good for everyone,
Right.
but for them it really helps bring something abstract to concrete
Mm.
through visuals. So someone with Down syndrome can have a cognitive impairment, someone with Down syndrome can have a physical disability, someone with autism the same, but you also get individuals with autism who are very intelligent. They're talented and gifted in their intelligence, and they need help emotionally or with regulation
Or
and
socially,
yeah,
but
or
yeah, but
social.
it's not
Thank you for touching on
yeah.
that. For that's huge, and so they need somebody to walk them through a social situation. We
Yeah.
have a middle schooler who we have an adult there just to kind of help them with games, because the games, the competitiveness, it makes that social situation really hard, and it can cause a lot of dysregulation. But if I have somebody there to explain the rules, to make sure that people are playing fairly, I feel safe and I can do it.
Yeah.
um, and then you have emotional disabilities, which could be anything from anxiety, which and maybe anxiety is prohibiting me from getting in the classroom. I don't feel safe. It causes some things. Depression, you can have bipolar disorder, and that, we think maybe more of our adult people that we know, but that can happen in young children as well. And so you have huge dysregulations and blowups and yelling, and that oftentimes we get fight or flight and
Yeah.
we react, but it's no different, and there's a need that needs to be met.
Where does ADHD fall on this spectrum?
Y-
Because I know that that's a common one that we
yeah.
have in a lot of our classrooms and in our churches and our homes.
Yeah, I mean, ADHD can impact learning. It can impact cognition, depending on where it's at. But yeah, it's just a diagnosis that we're still learning more about, and where it comes from and what ages it impacts. I think ADHD is one of the harder ones, even for me to understand, because it truly is just them learning differently or their body needing more. And I think what I struggle with ADHD sometimes, and I'm speaking, truthfully, is it's such a wide range of needs to, I can't cope with sitting, to I can cope with sitting, but my brain is just going in circles. And, that really does impact learning. I
And
think it is
social, it impacts social
yeah,
relationships too.
because you're not acting right. You can't sit still, and a lot of times we'll say, "Hey, sit still. Listen, listen." We see it as disrespect, but
But sometimes
they
if
would
they
love
have
to, but they can't.
and sometimes if they have something to fidget with, they can listen better.
Yes, yes,
So that's some of
yeah,
the accommodations that we can bring.
yeah. A
The,
fidget. Sometimes we'll have a wiggle seat so that their body can just wiggle and they don't have to stand up and move. Or sometimes their auditory processing, things are just louder for them.
yeah.
Imagine if people were yelling all the time. Could you focus? No. So we have
No.
headphones.
Yeah.
A lot of times, all you need is a fidget and a headphone, and that's going to solve, I feel like, 90% of our things
Wow.
here.
Even sensory things,
Mhm.
I was recently at a conference with, a bunch of kids ministry leaders, student ministry leaders, and as we walked in, they gave us a choice of some kind of fidget. Like there
That's
were
awesome.
pipe cleaners that were really furry, like sensory. There were spinners. There was Play-Doh. There was like all the little beads. And we all kind of said, like, we all did a little bit better even having that. But
Yeah.
it gave us an understanding of being around people who were doing that, and it didn't mean we weren't paying attention. Do you know? So it was
Mhm.
getting us
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, oh, that's such a good exercise. Just everybody kind of pick something and let's just all get comfortable with having some little
Yeah.
accommodation that we're working with.
Just so true, because we all need help in our own ways. We all
Yeah.
need a little extra support. And yeah, that's one of the ways that is really helpful. And I think for the longest time, we see things as toys and we're like, you can't bring your toy,
Right. We see
or
it as
yeah,
toys.
and
Yes.
it's a tool. And
Yeah.
so oftentimes I'll tell that to people, or even just children in
I like
class,
that. It's a
because
tool, not a
it's a
toy.
tool, not a toy.
Wow.
They're
That's good.
using that to help them. Or you compare it to a Band-Aid. Does everybody need a Band-Aid? No, you only need a Band-Aid if you need it, and so
Mm.
not everybody gets a Band-Aid because one person has the Band-Aid,
No, that's
they
really
need it.
good also. That's
So
good language. So what I'm hearing is there are some categories you can have mixed categories, and then there's a spectrum within them, right? So
yes.
there's a spectrum within autism or ADHD or even in Down syndrome. You've talked about that, like uh their abilities and where they are. So let's talk about language because I think sometimes we don't say anything because we don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
What are some of the language cues that we should use? Because it's like, is it handicap? Is it disabilities? Is it special needs? Is it specialized needs? Is it autism spectrum disorder? Is it just the spectrum? Is it like help us with some of the
Yeah, I feel like
language?
don't Google it.
Don't Google it. Okay, that's good.
I mean, you can. There's helpful resources, but things do change a lot. And I think, again, back to humility, like taking a deep breath, and it's like, I'm going to become a student and
Yeah.
learn. You can always ask parents, caregivers, or the individual how they'd like to be referred to. But I'll give some practical, like there's some things that we can do. The
Okay.
first is person first language, right? You never want to call somebody that's a disabled person. You want to say they're a person with a disability. Because when
Great.
you say disabled person, you're literally putting their disability first
Wow.
before who
Literally.
they are.
Yeah.
And so that's the most dignifying way is you can say you're a person first, and then we're going to talk about your
The
disability.
little girl
like,
with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you're
Person
referring to
first, I like that.
someone and you know their diagnosis, you can say, they were born with cerebral palsy. You're telling a story about who they are.
Mm,
They were born with cerebral palsy,
story.
or they developed, that condition. Someone
Mhm.
developed, even we talk about ALS, Lou Gehrig's
Yes.
disease. They developed ALS,
Yes.
or they were diagnosed with something.
Mhm.
It's really dignifying. So that, of all things, is, I think, something that you can practice. I still recognize some days I get that wrong, and I refer
Yeah.
to somebody's disability first, and I just go, "Oh, sorry,
Yes.
my apologies," and you
Good.
just try again. And that's okay. I think even within what we refer to people as having special needs or disabilities, some people have different preferences on that. And so just learning that, that's okay. I use special needs as my go-to, or specialized needs still, because I do think they have unique needs, and that's just how I frame it in my mind. And
Mhm.
so that's what I go with. And if I meet somebody who has a problem with that, I'll change it for that person, just as a way to honor and dignify them.
Yeah.
And you just say, "Oh, I'm sorry," just as anybody has a preference, they're gluten-free, and you give them a meal with gluten in it.
Yeah.
You're gonna say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah.
Let me fix it. Let me try." And that's just regular relationship stuff. And
Comes back to that humility piece.
yeah, I think oftentimes if we let fear drive us, that creates that distance. And what's there to lose? You're welcoming them in, you're developing a relationship. There's going to be some kinks, and that's okay. That's okay. I
Mhm.
just want to say, like, that's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Just take that step and say, "I'm sorry," and teach me, and that will mean more to them through that mistake than honestly not making that mistake. Because
Yeah.
when they say this person is teachable, this person really cares about who I am and what I need, that just made that relationship 10 times stronger than if you hadn't made that mistake. So make
Yeah.
mistakes. I
That's-
make mistakes every day, especially in this
so
area.
good.
So
That's good to hear
yeah,
from someone that has dedicated his life to this, that you're still making mistakes. And I
all the
think what
time.
that tells us is we don't have to have it all together or be perfect before
Absolutely
we
not.
start.
Mm-mm.
And in our next session, we're going to talk about practical things. And so this is probably a good time just to say, we don't have to be perfect and we are going to make mistakes, and to be humble and to be seeking help and education and finding the people that can do that with us. And so I just really want to encourage you to take that next step, whatever it is, a baby step in your church or in your area of ministry where we can learn together. That's the important part, is that we're learning together. So thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of this critical conversation on disabilities and specialized needs. And we look forward to being with you in session 3, where we are going to get more practical about how to do some of these things and come alongside of parents and volunteers in the local church. And if you're looking for more information about this topic, you can visit our website at the-iff.com. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session.